Before we start tonight, I'd like to change things a little bit from a regular work session and start off by saluting the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I have a prepared statement I'd like to read. This meeting is a public work session where the board will hear a variety of reports and have discussion regarding topics which may be scheduled for official action at a future meeting. During this meeting, we will not be voting or making the final decision on any topic. Questions and comments by members of the audience will be limited to those topics on the agenda for this meeting only. Tonight we will present proclamations to outstanding students. This meeting is being videotaped for community cable channels. Individuals attending this meeting and intending to speak to the board should be aware that they are being videotaped. In order to meet the requirements of Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, it is necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the board during the meeting. To assure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the board come to the microphone and state their name and address. Members of the audience are asked to limit their questions and comments to no more than 3 minutes. This limit will permit time for all of those who wish to speak to the board. Whenever the members of the audience exceed this time limit, the board president may ask the individual to yield the microphone to the next speaker. Thank you very much. At this time, we have some proclamations. I'll turn it over to Ken.
Thank you. I invite Dr. Bond to go to the podium, please. And we'll invite the students who were invited to come tonight to come and stand beside Dr. Bond along this wall up here, if you would. We've invited 6 National Merit finalists to come to be introduced to the board tonight. Dr. Bond is signaling me that there are semifinalists today to become semifinalists in the near future. Pardon? I said it backwards. They're semifinalists today. They're to become final. Yeah, you should have said it instead of signaling me. They're semifinalists today, and we expect them to become finalists in the near future. I'm sorry. Apparently 4 of the 6 students we invited are here, and Dr. Bond, will you introduce them and talk a little bit about their accomplishments, please?
Certainly will. As you know, that becoming a National Merit semi-finalist puts our young folks in a select group of people across the country and across the world. Over the years, we've had a number of young folks who have been semi-finalists and become finalists. This year is no exception, and this year we're being represented by an outstanding group of academic persons, but also by an outstanding group of young people. Totally. These young folks are not just bright in the classroom, they're bright people. And we're very, very proud of them. And as we call their name, would you please come forward and face what direction there, Mr. Weir?
Well, I think they can stand in front of me. How's that?
That way you wouldn't have to come around
and
here.
And face the audience.
Okay, great.
Right over here.
We'll do that. Jason Bechtel. Jason? June Young Choi is not with us yet. Catherine. That's a little high school joke. June sometimes is a little late arriving, but he always gets there. Catherine Friedinger. Congratulations, Catherine. Chang Ching Debbie Lin. Brian Quested is the starting halfback on the football team. If this had been a week ago, we probably would have been allowed out a little early. But what a difference a week makes. And Susan Schreiber. Congratulations, Susan. These are our National Merit semi-finalists, and within a couple months, we are sure that we will be calling these young folks back again as finalists. In addition to that, very soon we will be acknowledging 3 dozen commended students in the National Merit Scholarship Program, and we're extremely excited about that. We also have a Hispanic merit winner this year, too, and we'll be talking about that at a later date as well. Ladies and gentlemen, you are now... Do we have time for a question of them?
Sure.
I think folks may be curious as what you'd like to pursue as a career, and what schools you're currently thinking about. Susan?
I'm planning on going into engineering, probably chemical, and right now I'm looking at, I'd like to go to customer.
Say that loudly.
I'd like to go into engineering, probably chemical, and I'm hoping to go to either Princeton or Harvard.
Well, I'm interested in a career as a pediatrician, so I'm thinking of Brown University or Penn State.
I'm considering biology, and I'd like to go to Bowdoin College in Maine.
I'm considering engineering, and I'm applying early decision.
Early decision to Harvard. This reminds me so much of my opportunities when I was in 12th grade. Congratulations.
Give him another round of applause.
Excuse me, Mr. President, but June Joy is here. I told you, he may not be here on time, but June will be here. This is June Joy. Why don't you folks tell June what he has to do now? Don't tell him all of it. Let's keep some of it a secret. Where are you headed and what do you want to do when you get there, buddy? School. School, career. You need a minute, June?
I would like to go to Harvard and complete a three-degree program and go on to medical school.
What's a 3-degree program?
Well, I just wanted to do a triple major.
Works for me. Okay, thank you, Jim.
Oh, yeah, okay, good. It's the same one.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to, at this time, turn the meeting over to our superintendent, and he can move us on the agenda.
Well, as our board president has already said, the purpose of this meeting is to provide information and the discussion that expands that information base for the Board of Education and our guests this evening. We won't make any decisions, but the board will get reports and hear recommendations and certainly be involved in discussion which will expand its general information about important topics that may result in decisions or considerations. The first item dealing with facilities is a follow-up to a board request to hear a report from Mr. Wood about the progress of the renovation project at Penndale School. Mr. Wood, if you would, please.
Thank you, Dr. Bose. In your packet this evening, I have taken some time to share with you where we are in our renovation schedule at Penndale Middle School. And the work completed to date is, and many of you have experienced the Phase 1 site work and the realignment of the bus driveway and some of the major work that was done in front of the building. If you have an opportunity to drive past the building, you also see the before and after in the front of the building as it relates to the main office area renovation. The guidance suite area has been completed on the interior and exterior, health suite interior and exterior. Tech Ed, that's quite exciting. If you have an opportunity, I would suggest you visit. We have established a drafting room, production lab, and 2 modular labs that are quite exciting. So I would suggest if you have an opportunity, you ought to stop by and see that program. Our boiler room conversion is just about complete. We expect to be firing boilers at the end of the week. The hot water loop in the entire building, we had not anticipated having the luxury of completing the hot water loop around the entire building. We did this summer jump out ahead of the project, and we were fortunate enough to complete that work, which now makes it much easier as we leapfrog through the building and take areas where we need to tie in the new heating system. The electrical distribution system is well underway. Much of that has been completed. The extension of the roof blocking and the rubber membrane, and we're starting to put some metal edging or gravel stop around the building where some of the drive-it work has already been completed on the exterior. Much of the new domestic water lines, many of the new domestic water lines have been installed. Our current area of concentration, and as you can see as you drive Penn Street, is we're working feverishly in the annex, and we're about to begin the new level of the bridge. The elevator is under construction, and we're looking for occupancy in the annex in December of 1995. When we occupy those 20 classrooms, it will give us an opportunity to take other areas in the building and begin concentrating on instructional areas so that we can have those ready for September of '96, when we will be bringing a 7, 8, 9 class into that, or classes into that building, and upgrading the enrollment considerably from the 792 that we currently have. Anticipated phases for the summer, and areas that you really can only work in the summer, of course, would be the large and small gyms, which include the renovation of the locker rooms and the refinishing and restoration of the gym floors in both of those facilities, the completion of the auditorium. We're currently putting the air handling equipment in the auditorium, but we will still have the cosmetic things and the lighting changes to make in the auditorium. The Audion, we will be pulling the seating out of the Audion and sending that out to have it retrofitted and renovated. It's good quality seating. It's better seating than you can currently purchase today, so we really feel a need to recover it and repaint it electrostatically. Cafeteria work will be done over the summer, and of course the library or the IMC and Phase 2 site work we hope to begin to bid in January, so that just as soon as the weather breaks we can begin some of the Phase 2 site work. We're looking for a total completion of the project by December of 1996. We're about 15 to 20% ahead of schedule. That's very, very encouraging. People have been working at an excellent pace. We've had outstanding cooperation from both the staff and the student body. It has just been a well-coordinated project, and people care about where we're going and how we're going to get it done, and there's a lot of pride. I was concerned in the beginning, and I told the staff on the opening day of school that we'd probably hate one another by the end of the project, but it's going much better than most renovation projects that I've been familiar with or my colleagues have tried to carry out in a school of that size. On the back page, I've broken out our budget for the project, and I'm showing both expenditures to date and encumbered expenditures. And we said from the beginning, in fact, I took the liberty to dig out some budget figures that we had established in May of 1991, where we had said that the project would be a $14 million project, and plus the fees for the architect, which were always above and beyond the actual project. So we had talked about a $15 million project. It would appear now, based on the information we have and my estimates below, I do know that we'll have additional asbestos abatement work to be done. We have an estimate that Phase 2 site work will be some $729,000. We're going to be retrofitting the outdoor bleachers in the stadium, and that's on a very small scale, using basically what we have and just sandblasting the undercarriage of what we have and putting new aluminum floorboards, new aluminum seats on those bleachers. Gym floor repair, there are some repairs that have to be done, and of course, total refinishing. Replacement scoreboards, we're looking closely at one of our boards. We may be able to use one and retrofit it and just replace one, which would reduce that category. Electrostatic painting, and that is a situation whereby we take existing furniture, existing desks that are well built, but are older, and we just repaint the base and put a new Formica cap on them, and we recycle them. So we show money for electrostatic painting. The security system we are installing with our own people, and that's why you see a rather minimal cost of $4,500. And then the restoration of the Audion seating, I alluded to that earlier. There are 85 seats in there. It's typically $100 a seat to ship them out and have them restored. Movable and instructional equipment, if you look up above, you'll see that we have $340,403.62, and when you couple that with the $99,995, that's 4% of the construction cost, which is what we used for movable equipment. It's interesting to note that since we did go to a full tech ed program, which is a rather sophisticated program, those of you that have had a chance to see it at Brook and Field, it's an expansion of that, only with 2 laboratories here, and a considerable part of the instructional equipment expenditure involves tech ed. And then, of course, the final item there is a contingency fund. That's something that we don't typically want to spend. It's something that you have to have in a project of this scope. You just never know what you're running into. We will have some additional change orders. We learned today that we have some rotten roof deck on the auditorium, on the old part of the 31 auditorium. We also know occasionally we'll open a wall and there'll be a steel beam in the center of the wall where there's to be a door, and we have to move that type of thing. So there will be some change orders, and that's to be expected, and I think it'll be minimized once we move over into the 1955 building. But we've been concentrating on the old Voc Ed building, which was 1937, and of course Lansdale High School, which was 1931. And you do run into some surprises. You don't have as-built drawings, and as you knock open walls and see some of the different things that are in those walls, you find that you have to make some changes. But that basically, when you have run a grand total on that, we're at $14,920,219.47, and that's the budget that we anticipated this morning. Questions?
Art, as you might recall, when we discussed the turnaround from carrying 1,300 students, maintaining a 789 configuration, as was the original plan when we set forth with a redistricting committee. We were sitting at the high school, I believe it wasn't in 91, it was March of 94. And I can remember very well that I had concerns because we were making it was like a weekend decision to scrap all of the redistricting plans, and on a Monday, right before the meeting, we called the whole thing off. And at the time, the $14 million was standing with, I called it a carrot on the stick at the time, of a savings of $1.5 to $2 million that would be saved in the construction costs by downsizing that school to grade 9 only, and instead of having the 1,300 students that were planned to go in there during renovations, we would not only cut that money from the expense of the construction, taking it down to $12.5 million, we were also going to have a faster completion. In May of 94, the scheduling for this that was presented to us was really to be done with almost everything, with the exception of, I see boiler room, boiler room and some final and punch list items for September and October of '95.
Yeah, but that,
There wasn't a 2-year construction period even, you know.
we don't have a 2-year construction period. You're dealing with May of '94.
Right.
We finally we awarded bids in May of '95. So, you can't go back and count that year that we were doing nothing.
Well, when we approved redistricting, it was definitely stated that that rec camp plan was a 1-year plan only for the
Exactly.
94-95 school year. And we're into 95-96, still having to deal with construction despite the fact that we dragged down
But
capacity
we
so far.
didn't deal with construction last year. If you recall, the architect was late putting the bids on the street. The bids were not awarded until May, and construction started in June. We've only been in construction since this
Well, maybe
past
we
June.
were, but we dragged down the school for construction for that year. And what I'm trying to find out is, at the time, I know Tommy even backed you up on this, that he talked with you and that you'd given him assurances that this was doable and that it was realistic to do it that way, and that we were all set for construction. And that's how it was brought to us for consideration as to whether or not we were going to separate 8th and 9th as we did. There are also expenses, associated with the fact that we had 8th graders separated from 9th that have combined courses, specialty courses that they'd normally be sharing, and the rearrangement of our sports. What I'm trying to find out is if the architect had advised you of that timeline, of that predictable cost savings by the double crews, being able to work double duty there, and then when it came down to implementing that, it didn't materialize. What is the accountability on the architect's part for misadvising us, for not evaluating it fairly?
I can't tell you what his liability is. I can tell you that we have built 2 new elementary schools with a total of 18 drawings, 18 pages of drawings. I need to tell you there are 104 pages of just architectural drawings for Penndale, plus the mechanical drawings, as they relate to HVAC, plumbing. The scope of a renovation is just, the more time you take planning, the better opportunity you have to get realistic pricing. And I think our colleagues or our neighbors are learning that. I mean, Radnor High School had a $25 million budget. They opened their bids, they were $35 million. They haven't started the project. I think Upper Merion learned that by hurrying the design process, they really paid for that over the long haul. I think if you follow Methacton, their budget right now is some $27 million to renovate their high school. And part of that is they're going to have more kids in it than we had in our situation. I mean, we're learning that people, in talking to some of the people that bid our project, they absolutely would not have bid it had we strung it out over a 3 to 4 year period. And that was our original plan. I mean, in 1991, in fact, if I can just share with you, as a result of recent discussions and building tour with the administration on August 1991, it is evident that the building will be functioning at such a capacity that blocks of vacant classrooms will not be available for large-scale renovation work. To this end, interior renovations are proposed to be conducted over a period of 3 to 4 years so as to minimize disruption in the instructional program.
But 91 wasn't the last reference point
I
for us as a
understand that.
board. It was 94 when the
understand
timelines
that,
and the pricing was given.
And I can only tell you...
And the drag down of the enrollment, which was not in consideration there. We were talking about full enrollment at that time.
Yeah, and we were
At
really talking
1,600 students with a 3-year. But I mean, at the time when this was brought forward, it just seems to me the accountability on the part of the advisors, those who we're relying upon, isn't responsible judgment calls, and we're biting at these things and then they're not materializing. I just feel that there should have been some shared accountability for this going from the $12 to $12.5 million after we made those accommodations, and then all those the foul-ups that were dealing with the engineers and everything that you had to deal with, when in fact you were told everything was a go for
It
that?
was
And
a
I just-
frustration for me.
I
And I
know it
spent
was.
many hours just beating on people to get out the bid. I mean, I shared that with Tom regularly, I shared that with Bill Allen. But, you know, on the other hand, the warning that I got from those folks was, you know, do you want to make the project more costly? I mean, one of the things you can do, if you take the $14 million budget and you just, since 1991, escalate that at 3.5% per year, that takes us over $16 million for that project. And I don't know how, I know that a lot of people told me straight out they would not bid the project if it was a 3 or 4 year project. And I think we did ourselves a favor by drawing that down. I'm not happy that we lost the year, but I am happy with the results that we have now, and I'm very happy with our cost per square foot and the performance that we're getting as it relates to the construction. Donna?
Vicki, are you done?
I just have a financial question on
Oh,
this,
go ahead.
just to finish
Go ahead.
up.
That's all right.
Can you tell me that given the change in the numbers, we've bounced between those two parameters, 12 now to almost 15 million, do we have full financing to cover this through its completion?
Well, see, I don't understand the 12 number. I mean, we have always used, and correct me, Dennis, if I'm wrong, we've always used 14 million plus architectural fees and contingency fees.
On the original drawdown schedule, that's what we've always included this project at 15 million. The $1.5 million came up somehow between
The board
savings,
approval.
the board approval and
Alleged savings.
and the savings that we were supposed to incur by moving the kids out and keeping just 9th grade there and 7th and 8th grade at Brook and Field.
And to compensate for the extra staffing costs and personnel costs related with the separation. But my question still stands. Do we have the full financing to carry through this project as well as taking into account any remaining bills? Obviously, you have things encumbered still for Walton Farm, do you not? Some things rolling in?
Correct, some things are still
Walton Farm
encumbered.
and Bridle Path?
And in addition to that, we're also paying an architectural fee for the second facility over on Keenest Road.
Well,
That's approaching
what I want to
about-
know is, considering all encumbered expenses, all other projects that are on the books, do we have the financing already secured for this full amount that's due?
To answer your question, we do not have the cash available for this, but if the board remembers, we have spent $6.2 million on the land at Keenest Road. I think we've said a number of times that in order to complete this project, we will have to make a decision, and I've spoken with Mrs. Mango and Mr. Clements, and I've asked them to make that a high priority, and that we have something in line by February on how we're going to complete this project.
In other words, we do need new funding.
Due to that
One way or another, we
right,
need
due,
new
Mr. Chair,
funding.
due to that expenditure of the $6.2 million, which was not budgeted in this bond issue, we need to reimburse the 92 bond issue in order to complete this project.
Okay, for everything we have, what would you say is our need, financial need here,
Right now,
considering it all?
probably about $5 million.
5 million? For everything that you know that's on the construction?
Yes, I think when PFM was here and Art and I had worked on the drawdown schedule, we had figured at that time about $3 million. but
Well, it kind of got
as I
juggled.
said, there's
One
a
said
half-
1, another said 6.
Well,
and
not
then-
included in the drawdown schedule were the fees for Breslin, which I think they're approaching about $500,000 right now as his fee for the work he's currently doing.
Okay,
So I've asked, as I said, I've asked Mr. Clements to make that a priority, that we get some idea by
So we're-
February, in case, as Mrs. Mangle has asked, that we do this on a competitive basis.
But
so
you
that
feel
we have the
comfortable?
time. Well, I
You
would
feel
like,
comfortable with that number, 5 million
Yes.
is to bring a zero balance?
correct.
Do, okay. Thank you, go ahead.
Everybody understands that. We're going to need $5 million to finish Pendale and also to pay the architect Breslin for the drawings for the second high school.
And that-
Okay?
But I
That's-
still want the board and the community to realize that we have not overspent the bond issue, that when we bought the
Not yet.
land, we said at that time that this was more or less a loan that would have to be paid back from a future bond issue whenever the board decided what our expansion policy would be.
Who else has a question? I think Ralph had his hand up.
Donna had one also.
Thank you, Ralph. Or asbestos abatement, when did you learn that that was a necessity, and where's that located, that
Well,
work site?
we knew under the ADHERA Act, we had to do a total inspection and have a plan filed with DER and EPA in 1988. In 1988, our number was in excess of $1.5 million for the abatement that had to be done in Penndale. We looked at that and we determined that a lot of that abatement was below grade in tunnels that currently have steam pipes. By going overhead with all of our utilities above the ceiling, we are now just going to seal those tunnels off.
Seal the tunnels off, okay.
So as we get into some areas, it's not uncommon almost weekly and sometimes daily to find small areas that need to be abated because of the construction, because they're above grade and behind pipe chases in existing lavatories and areas like that. I am estimating that we're going to spend about $150,000 instead of the 1.5 million.
Okay, well, the estimated additional you have here, 50,000.
Yeah. But we've already, if you recall, we've already paid, and that's reflected in the general contractor, under the general contractor, we've already paid Alcam to do all the locker rooms, all the gymnasiums, the boiler room, and many pipe chases, as you've approved two $11,000 change orders for abatement.
Okay. Phase 2 site work, just a real quick explanation of what that is, what that entails.
Phase 2 site work will include the removal of the tennis courts, the development of a parent drop-off area, the reconstruction of the existing parking lot and adding, as per our land development plan with the borough, islands in that existing parking lot. We have a swale that we have to do at the corner of Line Street and Hancock, where there's been water cascading down over that street, over Line Street. We have to go across the street and build a new culvert and inlet right adjacent to the railroad track area. And there's just other drainage throughout. A lot of pipe work on the property.
Any attempt to negotiate those islands in the parking lot to have those waived lanes?
I tried hard. And
did you go? Who went with you?
Dirk and Edson and Dick Warmcastle.
Okay. Warmcastle's contract did not have anything in there for delay of game.
No, it did not.
That was part of a discussion we had early on. And you still
That's
feel
right.
we shouldn't be doing that, adding that to contracts? Any penalties?
It's so hard in an engineering. I would say in new construction, you could probably include liquidated damages. Now, I don't know how an architect would respond to that. But in a situation like this, where they really had to crawl throughout this building, and every time they came back and crawled through the building, they found things that we added. I think it's one of the cleanest specifications I've ever worked with as far as renovation's concerned.
Okay. I guess one last question. When do you need to go for money, Dennis?
As I said earlier, I would like to have
At the latest date?
At the latest, May.
May. And if you do not have this money by May, we are dry.
There's a very good possibility we'll be bone dry.
What about the other improvements that are needed that have yet to be done? We had ADA work, we have roofs, we have things in the,
Well,
that is all.
there's
and that
money
all
set
adds to
aside.
the
I think
list?
we have some money set aside at Pembroke and Penfield.
Well, there's supposed to be $3 million.
Nick, let's get back to Donna. Did you
Oh,
have
I'm
any more
sorry.
questions, Donna?
Well, I'm just hearing the money, I think this and I think that. I want to know exactly how much money there is. And that's why I'm asking for exact dates, exact amounts, and exactly
From our
when you're
current
going to.
projections, we will need to have the bond issue and or the financing plan, whatever the board decides that will be, in place by May.
Is that without holding back the Penfield and taking from any of the Penfield, Pembroke projects?
Yes.
without touching that?
That's
That
without
project
touching
is
that.
still, that money is still committed for those
We
projects?
will need the money to complete the Pendale project.
Thank you, Mr. Clements.
No more questions?
No more questions.
Ralph?
Thank you.
Mine was answered, it was about the, what the offsite was.
Let's stay on this side. Terry?
Yes, Art, the question about penalties. To me, in contracts, you have a penalty for things that the contractor didn't plan on. Not things like asbestos abatement. Even though he didn't plan on that, he comes to you and he says, hey, we have this problem, we have laws that we have to abide by, and we need to change it, and it's going to take this much more time and this much more money. Then it comes before the board, and the board knows that we need to do that, so there's no holdup of it. And there's no penalty either. But shouldn't there still be a penalty clause for other things that don't come in front of us?
Well, help me understand.
An example.
I mean, if we show that a door goes through that wall on a drawing in the annex, which is the old Lansdale High School, for which we don't have as-built drawings.
Right.
And they start to cut that wall, and there's a bearing column there.
Right.
And we have no choice but to put the wall there. We need to move that column to the right or left. That's a change order.
Right, and that comes before us, and
You deal with it.
right, and there's no penalty either for delay. But if he tells us that it's going to take so much time, and his estimate is off for incompetence, not for bearing beams that we need to address, but for incompetence.
You're
and
talking
things.
about the contractor now.
Yes.
No,
Shouldn't there be some kind of, where's his accountability?
His accountability is there, and he'll deal with the problem, and they're moving at a more rapid pace than any project I've moved with, quite frankly, or I've been the construction manager of in the district, and I think that's some $77 million worth. The one reason that we're not using liquidated damages anymore in the Commonwealth, very few people are, is because they come back to us and say, you want a $1,000 a day penalty if we haven't met your completion date, but yet you're not willing to put an incentive in of $1,000 a day
right.
if we complete early. And I don't like that approach. I mean, I don't want to pay an incentive for early completion when we have a reasonable schedule already at hand. I mean, today we met and talked about the possibility, and these people are anxious to move through this project. I mean, we have all our air handling equipment on location and put in place. A lot of the ductwork, a lot of things that we were looking to do next spring, they have done because they want to be paid. I mean, they want to work this and they want to staff it accordingly. They don't like the idea that they have 5 people working today, and now we're going to slow down, and they have to lay those people off and bring them back in 3 weeks. But the point I make is we don't want, on that incentive, the incentive plan whereby we would pay them a premium, we're not really that anxious to take over some of the areas that they might jump ahead on. But today we did talk, they're willing. We've been working a lot of Saturdays and Sundays, and we've been working a lot of 10 and 12-hour days, and that's their cost. They normally don't bid it that way. They bid it as straight time. Today we talked about the possibility of starting early on a Saturday morning to take down curtain walls at 3 levels and have them down Saturday, new studs in and the new windows in by Monday for the opening of school. We're investigating that now because they're so anxious to move through the project. There happens to be a lot of work out there right now, and they want to get in and get out. And if you look at the trailers on location, you know, we try to pay them for stored material, but we almost have all of the windows for the whole job, and that's dollars out of their pocket. As soon as they can bill for them and bill for the installation, they like to move that as quickly as they can.
Tom, real quick, two questions. Any union laborers?
Excuse me?
Any union laborers? Any union jobbers here?
We have some union subs, but we're all non-union.
What area? Electrical?
No.
Which area?
subs to the general contractor.
Okay. You talked about Saturday and Sunday work. Are we responsible for time and a half or double time on any of those days for the union people?
They are.
They are? We don't pick that up? Okay.
They have a contract, and the contract is cast in stone, and we don't change that because they're...
So we don't need any of that?
We don't need any of that.
The, your pay schedule, a typical pay schedule on all these folks, as you're looking at needing money in May, the pay schedules you're putting out are typically what?
Well, they'll range. You can see expenditures to date, and we're just getting into heavy expenditures.
Right.
The drawdown, for an example, some people that, and I don't understand why they do it, it's none of my business, but for an example, we've had a considerable amount of sprinkler work done, and we haven't made our first payment to the sprinkler contract.
Okay.
So some people are very, very quick to bill you, other people kind of drag their feet.
All right, thank you.
Questions from this side? Okay, move over to this side. Bill?
I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment, and that I do work in construction quite often. I was very impressed that how the bids did come in very close to the estimated budget. When you look at a project of new construction, it's very easy to know what you're dealing with. But when you're dealing with a building that was built in the 30s and 50s, and we had started working, I don't know how many years ago, with an estimate, without drawings, without inspections, of whether the number's 12 million or 14 million, to me is rather remarkable that once we had all the inspections by the electrical engineers and the HVAC and the plumbing, the structurals, all the architectural drawings, and that we did come in this close to budget, I just think that's an excellent job on a lot of people's part. And I also know that I do have a copy of the drawings, and to see such detail of details in the building, of what is there and what is expected of the contractors and subcontractors, it tells me that as long as our inspection is being done properly by the general contractor, the architectural, or the architect, and Mr. Wood, that we're going to get what we asked for. And that's important. If you're paying for it, you should get it, and you should get it because it's necessary. As a subcontractor on jobs like this, I would have been very leery of liquidated damages on a building where you don't know what you're going to find. Very difficult to quote a job like that. And for somebody to say, now, we don't know what's here, but if you're late, you're going to be penalized, a lot of people will walk away from that, or they're going to raise their price to cover the unknowns. So on a project like this, I would have really questioned asking for liquidated damages if it wasn't done in a timely fashion. I guess, to me, I don't know what all the, I think we're doing a good job. Experience tells me we're moving right along. I was in the building, you see the annex, there's not a student in there, and the whole place is torn up. If we hadn't drawn down the population of the school, we couldn't have done all that. We're going to have that whole annex done at one time, and then start working on blocks of classrooms on the newer building. I don't know how you'll ever determine what you saved or what it cost you. I don't think it's possible to know what bids would have been. If you told people this was a 4-year project, I don't know anybody who can predict his material costs or his labor costs 4 years from now. I don't know how we would have done it. It would have been either unfair to us as a school district, because people would have just fudged things and assumed inflation rates, or some subcontractors would have made big mistakes. And I don't think that's good when you're trying to build a building and have it done correctly, to have subcontractors that have felt that they've been taken advantage of. Now, maybe they wouldn't have been. You can say, well, then don't bid the job. But The purpose is not to take advantage of everybody and say, if you don't like it, don't bid. We do want bidders. We want as many as we can get that are qualified. And I think by doing it the way we did, with the drawings that maybe took too long, but let us send out drawings to subcontractors that they understood, it covered everything, and they felt confident in bidding. And we condensed it down to a 1.5, 2-year project. Thank you.
Bill? I kind of agree with Bill that renovating old buildings like this can be hazardous in terms of forecasting dollars, and you never can tell what you'll find as you start going through the process. This seems to be a progressing 15-20% ahead of schedule according to yourself, so we're in pretty good shape, at least at this time. I was just wondering, for my own edification, I think you said the current enrollment was what, 792?
892.
892. And the projected enrollment is 1675?
We had 1,675 the year before we drew the building down.
Okay. And when you're finished, you...
I talked with Dr. Venema today because we're trying to look at room usage and utilization for September, and it would appear as though we'll be somewhere in the 1,300, 1,350 range. You agree with that, Dr. Bose?
Yes. That's the projected maximum enrollment.
Right. Maximum enrollment will be?
For next September.
Okay.
Oh.
That's not what we'll,
yeah.
I mean, we'll have room for growth in that building.
Okay.
But the enrollment in September, I think, is going to be somewhere around 1,350 youngsters.
So long-term, when this whole project is over, you at least expect to get back to the 1675, 1800, 1700 range?
It will be our growth building.
Okay.
Bill, remember that 1675 is an excessive enrollment. I think the capacity of that building was listed around 1640. We were in excess of capacity holding classes in the Audion that last year.
I'm just trying to get a feel for what
That's a projection for the enrollment that we expect in the next school year, and leveling off and balancing the enrollment between the three secondary, middle school or junior high schools.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Any other questions? Let's wrap this one up.
For clarification. I don't know if I misunderstood you, Art, but some of what Bill said makes me think that I must have. Was not the biggest delay not during construction, but primarily in getting started to even begin construction? That all that was supposed to be in place with the engineers and the go-ahead with the bids was not able to be executed for a year?
Well,
didn't you say we just began construction in June of '95?
Yeah, we began construction. We made awards in May, and we were probably a year in
In '95. So it really didn't deal with construction. It dealt with the fact that we dragged down that enrollment, and we really hadn't even begun to put the bids out for that whole year. The school was just the same as it was the year before.
We had anticipated.
Let's wrap this up.
So
So Vicki, are you asking if Wormcastle is going to, are you asking Art to go back to Wormcastle and ask him?
I said I'd like to have an
consider
explanation of the accountability there for not
Well,
having a
that's, all right, let's wrap this thing
It's
up.
not
That's
dealing
a
with
fair
construction.
question, okay? I think, Art, you need to go back to Wormcastle and ask him. I quick figured it out. It's about, he's at about 6.5% if you figure it out. And that's probably a fair price for renovation. And I understand this is a tough project. There's no doubt about it.
He's
all right.
5.85.
Okay,
and
whatever.
some of those other figures you see there, Tom, reflect review by borough engineers.
Okay.
And
well, let's look what his final percentage comes in, and I think you owe that back to us, what his percentage is, so we can evaluate that. Number two, I think it's fair to say that we as a board, at least I was under the impression that we would be getting a little bit better price that for the whole building, that we were able to come with, and thanks to Ralph, that Ralph came up with his plan, and I think we're all a little bit surprised that it's coming in up to what it was budgeted. But again, understanding it's a renovation in a business where that's all we do are renovations, I think they're doing an excellent job. I think all board members ought to get over to Penndale, physically look at it to see what we are getting for the money. But I do think that the board is owed something from the architect on why it did take him so long to get the prints, because you even talked to me about it, that you were calling him every day, and I think he owes that to us.
And I certainly will demand that he give us some kind of an explanation. I will say this, and we all recognize it, I don't care whether you're talking about a renovation in your home or a renovation at a church or wherever, that as the design phase drags out, the scope of the project increases.
Sure does.
And in sometimes, that, some cases, that's good. We found some deteriorating pipes that occurred in the last 6 months prior to going bid that really would have been a change order had we bid earlier. So, the scope changed, and I think you can see that our original budget for site work was $800,000. That's up to $1.3 million. But we also had to comply with our land development plan. We had to comply with what the borough wanted.
Well, we need it not only for
All right,
financial,
let's,
but for the
we're gonna
parents
move.
of Penn.
I want something from our architect. I think it's owed to all the board. And again, for the audience, we do need to come up with additional $5 million. We know that. I shouldn't say additional. We need $5 million to finish the project. We should probably get it on the agenda for December to start talking about it. That gives us 6 months, so we'll have it by May, and let's move forward that way. All right? We have to, I have to interrupt 1 minute. I'm not going to take any questions from the audience yet. I believe a gentleman just came in, Brian Quested, and we'd like to recognize Brian. Turn it over again to Dr. Bond for about 2 minutes.
Brian Quested is the sixth American.
Come on up front, Brian.
You're used to being on
Come on
TV.
up front. I'm going to turn around and
Brian
face the
Quested
crowd.
is the sixth of our national. He's a clown too, but he's a good guy. Brian is the starting halfback on the football team and a National Merit semifinalist. We are very proud of Brian and what he's done academically as well as athletically. Brian often gets embarrassed about all the attention he gets, but we're proud of him and we will acknowledge him whether he gets embarrassed or not. As Brian Quested, Mr. Clemens.
And, now, Brian, I'd like to ask you to tell the audience what do you plan to do in the future?
I really haven't decided where I really want to go. I'm planning on majoring in medical engineering, and then I think about high school. We'll go from there.
What it really means is he's waiting to see where he can get a scholarship.
Well, thanks for coming out, Brian.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
See you Friday night.
Okay, now we'll have questions from the audience, and I believe Mr. Anderson had his hand up first.
Thank you, Mr. Clemens. I have a question on the financing issue. It concerns me to hear that we're going to run dry early. I'm given to believe that over the past 3 budget years, not the current one, the board chose to spend about $1 million a year out of the bond fund for things that were not construction related. And now we hear that we're running short on construction related projects. I'm wondering why we don't properly budget a set aside for what we know we're going to have to encumber for the construction projects before moving on to items that are not as mandatory of a nature as what the money was actually raised for in the first place, which was to do building reconstructions rather than buy general fixtures and equipment for use throughout the school district, as has occurred.
It's a very fair question. Ralph was looking at me as you were asking me that.
But I think that it should be pointed out, when the money was raised years ago, there was money put in for items that would be of a capital nature that you spend year to year. The difference between, we are going to need $5 million to complete all of the items that were in that budget, but you got to remember that there's $6 million plus $500,000, I think I heard, of architects that are related to a high school project that aren't related to this thing. So in essence, what they're saying is, all of the things those bond issues were borrowed for, there's close to, if they need 5 and it's almost 7, it's $1.5 million to $2 million of items that were originally borrowed for that they didn't spend on other capital projects, some of which included year-to-year things.
But that is a fair question, and I will tell you, as president of this board, that was a past practice, and it's a practice that I plan for the future that will not happen.
I mean, it concerns me now to go back to Wall Street and say we need more money for a project we already raised money for once, and say it's not because we went over budget, it's because we decided to spend the money someplace else instead. It doesn't sound like that carries credibility when you go back to them and say, well, we bought some land somewhere else instead, and we decided to buy some band instruments with the money, and so now we've run short on actually doing the renovation that we're primarily raising money for. So,
well, as I said,
that will no longer be the board's policy.
Yeah, as I said earlier, Mr. Anderson, I don't want the community or the board to think it was poor budgeting. It was just there were different priorities on buying that land at that time. If the board could have waited until and floated another bond issue at a later time to do the entire secondary project, but all that would have done is push the land prices up further. So I mean, that's why I don't want people to think it was bad budgeting. It was just at the time the land was available, the price the board felt was right, and they purchased that money with the full knowledge that that would have to be reimbursed at some future
So we have
point.
never actually raised money in the name of doing land acquisition for a high school.
That's correct. It's been said in the past that in other bond issues that there was money set aside for land purchases, and the people that say that are right. The money, however, was never set aside for the secondary purchase. Out of the 1990 bond issue, we had to buy land for Gwinnett Square. Out of the 92 bond issue, there were land purchases in order to build Walton Farm. The Bridle Path land was already the district's. And at the same time, we're also putting money aside to buy lots up in Hatfield Township, the movie lots, as everyone calls them. So as when people say that they've seen in the bond issues in the past that money was there to buy land, it was, but not the high school land, for the land for other projects.
I mean, I'm more concerned about the other $3 million because we'd be pretty close if we hadn't spent that money. And Mr. Kelly shared with me a copy of what some of those expenditures are for, and it seemed to me they were of a nature where we might have deferred them or done something else. And you'd think the first priority would have been to budget what we knew would be necessary for projects that were currently on the books. So, all right, thanks. And I'm glad to hear that will no longer be a policy for the board. Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? Okay, seeing no hands, we'll move on. Turn it back over to Dr. Bose.
Well, Mr. President, members of the board, I'm not sure the next topic is going to be as exciting. But maybe it'll be easier to understand. Dr. Juan Bond and Dr. Sue Cahill submitted an application for a grant on behalf of the school district in the spring of 1995. And that grant has recently been awarded. It would provide $250,000 to develop a program at the high school, basically involving tech prep, a new curricular movement in this country, and some other developmental programs to which Dr. Vaughn will speak shortly. But we have a problem with, we have the cart in front of the horse. What a board should do ordinarily, and hopefully this won't happen in the future, is that it would consent to a grant application before the application is processed, thereby agreeing before an award to accept the award if it's made, and not being involved in a twice visit or duplicative action when it can all be done at one time and beforehand, and the board would consent beforehand and be in front of the project. That didn't happen in this case. It's probably because of the transition the school district was going through with leadership and perhaps an oversight. Regardless, the board can correct this retroactively, and Dr. Vaughn is here to tell us what the project involves, what it would mean for our secondary students, grades 9 through 12, and what it could mean for the future of the school district. At the same time, I'm reminded that it's connected to the next and final topic we're going to address tonight for the board and our guests, that has to do with the state's requirement that all the school districts in the Commonwealth develop a long-range or strategic plan for the kinds of things that were discussed here this evening, as well as to set targets and expectations and standards for the future, from everything connected with high school graduation to the program that prepares kids along the way to be ready for high school graduation. And I raised that issue because this grant application that Dr. Bond and Dr. Cahill developed and Dr. Persing signed to submit makes some assurances that the school district will have a strategic plan, is developing a strategic plan, or already has one, which is not the case for us. Though we've found out that accepting the grant with assurances that we would develop a strategic plan is satisfactory to the Department of Education. So you can see why the two remaining topics might have some degree of commingling and some degree of overlapping, and it's important that the board know that it has a responsibility under Pennsylvania School Code to develop a strategic plan. I think we've learned that it doesn't have to be a strategic plan in the literal sense of the state's definition, but it could be a long-range plan that I'm sure that our board would want in any event as it plans for the future of this school district. So without any further delay, Mr. President, may I introduce Dr. Bond, who will give us a brief overview of what the grant application and the grant award means for us, and then answer questions as we talk about preparing the board to act in this next week. If you would, Dr. Bond.
In 1990-91, we did some research in preparation for the National Excellence Award. One of the things that we found at that time, that there was a percentage of our population that we felt was being underserved. And that being the general population, the 4.0 students. Dr. Elko, then superintendent, a few board members, and several of us from the secondary schools took a look at what was out there in the way of reform. We decided that we would become a member of the Southern Regional Education Board High Schools at Work program. That program's emphasis was on vocational, technical education, and the general student. We embarked upon a 5-year plan to be rid this secondary schools, primarily 10 through 12, of all general classes and all general programs. To that end, I was given the charge of directing the project, and Dr. Cahill was to assist me in that direction. We created a committee of community people, business people. We had a liaison from the board and staff people from the high school. I was also told at that time that it would behoove me, if we wanted to move this forward, to find some money. I was asked to find money that would not obligate the board later. Quite frankly, that was more of a challenge than moving in the tech prep direction. To that end, we pursued money with the High Schools at Work project, and in 1993-94, we received $10,000. That $10,000 was to be matched by the school district, and it was easily matched because we were buying social studies textbooks, and social studies textbooks was a part of the program, so it was easily matched. In 1994-95, we received matching funds, and we were doing a lot of staff development. Staff development and continuing of purchasing textbooks was easy to match $10,000. 1995-96, we received another $10,000, and we matched it the same way by funds that we had appropriated already to run the high school. In addition to that, we became one of 17 schools in the country who were part of a piloting advanced integration model. And this advanced integration model dealt with combining academics and vocational education in an integrated way. We received $7,000 for that project, no matching funds necessary in 94-95, and this year we received another $10,000. Those funds took us to a certain level in the Tech Prep initiative. We needed significant funds to continue that effort. We stand now in a position where we have no general courses at the high school. We stand where we're integrating academics and vocational education. We stand where we're doing a lot of interdisciplinary work with those general students. We stand where we've raised the expectations and the outcomes of what those students are learning. The next step was to involve post-secondary schools with the once general students and their education. We wanted to make sure that these students felt that they could go to post-secondary education, and primarily for these students we were talking about technical schools or junior colleges. To that end, we applied for a tech prep grant to begin working with Penn State and Montgomery County Community College to get some common programs and language together that would avail these once general students, now tech prep students, to go to post-secondary school. We received a grant of $65,000 to continue that effort. That $65,000 was approved by this board at their last meeting. That $65 means that we will have agreements with Penn State in the areas of business administration and administration of justice very soon, very soon. Additionally, we are in conversation with Montgomery County Community College to start a gerontology program and a child development program. Those programs were put in place based on research with business and industry and community in terms of what the likely of jobs will be in the future for these youngsters. Now that brought us to another level, and then there was another missing piece. The missing piece was career exploration for our students, career programming for our students, career information for our students, and career expertise for our guidance counselors and teachers in the program. The other piece that was missing was the business and industry partnerships and those kind of relationships. There was a need for our teachers, our guidance counselors, and for our students to know better what the world of work was like. And we needed to create literal partnerships with business and industry, not the kind of partnership where business and industry sit at the same tables as we do, and we agree what the curricula should look like and the kind of things and skills that students will need to succeed in the work world in the future. Now that was going to take a tremendous amount of money. We took a look at the Goals 2000 money that was available. The Goals 2000 money had to do with the same kind of interests we had, careers and business and industry partnerships. We tried to apply 2 years ago, and at that time we were told that it wasn't a year to do that. We applied at that time we were going to apply for $100,000, and we were told not to do it at that time, that the timing wasn't right. Last year we went forward again, and this time rather than the $100,000, I asked Dr. Cahill how much could we apply for. She said the most you could get would be $250,000. I like the sound of that, so we applied for it. We were sent a letter in September that said that we were the recipients of $250,000 of grant money to do those career exploration pieces and the business and industry partnerships and internships for students and teachers. And I'm here tonight to ask that we can accept this $250,000 to continue the Tech Prep initiative with business and industry and the career piece. I also want you to know very clearly, and it's important that you understand, that this $250,000 is a one-year grant, and if in fact we do not receive the monies again, there is absolutely no financial obligation for this school board or this school district beyond what we choose to obligate ourselves. The work that we will be doing with this monies will be work that will go on forever. The in-servicing of our staff, the in-servicing of our guidance department, which is a part of the guidance review committee's efforts anyway. What we did is we took a look at what was happening with other committees in the districts and tried to we did tie our proposal to other initiatives in the district so that we would be in concert with all of those efforts. And this is going to put us, quite frankly, we're already on the cutting edge of tech prep in this country, particularly as it relates to suburban schools. And this is going to put us way out front. You also should know that there's some high schools that work monies available, and that Dr. Bose, Dr. Cahill, and I will be visiting sites to take a look at how we can access some of that money. And it is my hope, I said this a year ago and people sort of laughed at me, but a year ago I said that I hope to be sitting on $500,000 of grant money for this year. And with this $250,000, I think that takes us up to $325,000. And I thought just for the heck of it, when we go for high schools at work, we'd ask for $175 just to make it an even $500,000. And what you have in front of you is the Goals 2000 proposal. And I know you've seen it, and I think with that background, if you have any questions as to the content and what the intent is, in addition to what I said, that I'm here and many of our tech prep coordinating team is here, and we'd be happy to address those questions so that we can go out and get
Thanks,
some
Dr.
money.
Bond. Okay, let's start on this side. Questions?
Right, is any of this, all of this money, is it above and beyond the SREB high schools that work, and above any of the money that comes through Carl Perkins?
Yes.
All in addition to that, okay.
We are not, the $65,000 is tech prep money. This is separate and beyond and unique to any of that.
Dr. Braun, there's no strings, no matching.
No.
Strings
We don't even
tied.
have to buy books to get this one.
What strings are there, though? What must appear in our strategic plan? I mean, it can't be just a commitment that we're going to do it. My kids are
what would
going
have
in
to
the
appear in
room.
our strategic plan is this technical preparation strategic plan that we've already written. We have a 5-year strategic plan for tech prep that we did 3 years ago. That would be a part of the district strategic plan. It would be a strategic plan for our tech prep program in the North Penn School District.
The grant application itself, Mrs. Prokowski, requires that you assure that you are developing a strategic plan, or you will. Now, when you see the components that the state requires in a strategic plan, you'll see a reference to technical education. So there's no conflict. In fact, it's a good fit. And a lot of what North Penn has already developed are the major components of what the state would call a strategic plan, or we might call a long-range plan, or a future vision, or whatever we might call it. So we bring this up because you must know that to receive the money, we have to make some commitment to planning that the state has just made a part of
I was
it.
just wondering what kinds of strings the Department of Ed is putting on.
Well, at this point, I think the approach to the long-range planning that's required is more flexible than is generally perceived, and also might be the subject to modification by the current legislation and the current governor's intent. That remains to be seen. It doesn't waive our obligation, if we accept this grant, to be involved in some kind of planning, and to do so, as you will find out, by September of '96.
I'm sorry.
I was going to, just to follow up, if I understood what we are going to physically do with this money includes in-servicing, the key elements are in-servicing the teachers, getting a business partnership to help develop the curriculum so that it meets the needs of the business people out in the world. Those are some of the key things that are going to go on where this $250,000 is being spent, and it's included in the tech prep plan already.
What?
We'll stay on
I'm
this
sorry.
side, then we'll come over.
Are you done, Terry? Okay. One, 4 things I appreciate you addressing and making clear for all of us tonight. 4 things. First and foremost, would you assure those here tonight and those in the viewing audience later this week that there is no overlap between tech prep and VOTech? There's coordination, but there isn't duplication.
That's a crucial point.
Okay.
One of the things that we were concerned about when we went into the tech prep initiative was to take care of all the students at the 4.0 level.
Right.
50% of our students at the 4.0 level are Voc Technical Career Center students. Another 50% of those students stay with us the entire day. We felt a tremendous obligation to make those youngsters as technically literate, as skilled as all of the youngsters going to the Technical Career Center. To that end, we created those career pathways, those four areas that I mentioned, and we will be doing some others. One of the reasons we were recipients of this grant is because we were taking care in this comprehensive high school students who have a technical bent but are not registered at the Technical Career Center by their choice. Additionally, it says we have put in place a curriculum that says that you can cross over. Many of these youngsters, many of these 4.0 youngsters are taking foreign languages and higher level sciences, but they want to be technical students. So it's crucial that you understand that we have an integrated plan, and we've worked very closely with the Technical Career Center. We met with the folks at the Technical Career Center when we were planning to make sure that what we planned was separate and distinct from what they were doing. Quite frankly, what we did is fill the void that they felt that they had at the Career Center for our youngsters. So we're not in competition, and that's one thing Dr. Irwin and I have worked very hard at. So we agreed that these would be the programs that would be most appropriate for us and for the Technical Career Center.
Probably the best thing to happen for you and for the North Penn School District is not only this program, but also the new relationship that you've been able to establish with Dr. Irwin in light of all the new plans that have been made up there at the VOTEC.
I think it would be fair to say that Dr. Irwin and I have been able to establish with each other. Because he's been, we have created some things with the Technical Career Center where we have youngsters going for one period sometimes. And there's a lot of wonderful things happening. We have in the Youth Apprenticeship Program, we had a youngster who needed Algebra 3 and they weren't teaching it at Tech Center and he was a full-day student there. So he came to us first period to get Algebra 3 so they could stay in the Youth Apprenticeship Program. I mean,
great advantage.
I don't want to spend too much. I just get fired up.
Second, I have three more points. The second point for supportive community members, as you have gone forward and written these articulation agreements, particularly in criminal justice, if you would give the audience the situation that you have now with the local police departments.
When we took a look at and had completed our research and decided that the two areas would be administration of justice and business administration. In administration of justice, we gathered all of the 7 municipalities together, and we talked with the county juvenile people, we talked with probation folks, we talked with all of the folks who dealt with juvenile detention centers and preventive measures, and we had all of them in the same room at the same time, and we said, should we do administration of justice? And they said yes. There's a market for it. Some of the folks said there was a more market in some areas than another, but we agreed that there was, and not only that, we had commitments from those folks that they would serve as partners with us in terms of mentoring and interning and shadowing and working with the young folks in those areas. So we've already established that, and we did the same thing with the business and administration piece. The most important thing in this for us is that we are now having business and industry and administration justice people help us decide what folks should know. The educators aren't dictating what they should know to be in business and industry.
Juan, would you further explain for us, for the audience tonight, as you did for Mrs. Scher and I, how this program is not a OBE derivative or an OBE stepchild, that this stands on its own merits and is not entangled with OBE as some people might suspect?
Yeah. I did a tremendous amount of research on the strategic plan because I knew the strategic plan was involved in this package. Right. Went to Harrisburg, called Harrisburg, researched the literature to find out what it was that we're talking about strategic planning and what we were talking about when we did this proposal. This proposal deals with facts. It deals with skills youngsters need to know. It deals with skills and things that teachers and staff need to know. You will find no language in here that is directly related to OBE. We purposely did that because we wanted the money and we wanted approval. And we knew that we needed to get to what was real and not fact, fiction, or value driven. This is a business and industry and a career orientation driven document. Our strategic plan for tech prep is called strategic plan because that's what the state says we needed to call it. But if you take a look at our strategic plan, you will find that it's not an OBE driven package. It is a student business industry skills driven package. And we took great pains to see that happened. We also got some information on strategic planning that there's a paragraph in there, something that separates and says that strategic planning is no longer OBE. And I think that we can share some of that information with you.
That's important for those folks that have those concerns, and I think that's why I'm so pleased with the Tech Prep program, because it has been able to remain separate and apart from many of the bureaucratic entanglements that we worry about. And I guess last, I think before you're finished your presentation, I really would appreciate you introducing the fine staff that you've surrounded yourself with. And I don't think you'd be the tech prep guru you are today if you didn't have them.
No, I would not be the tech prep guru I am today if it were not for them.
And if you would, too, just a special note of John Vencius's Future Plan Center, which we had a great opportunity to visit again this week and watch students actually use it. And John, I've been fond of your work, and particularly that your effort in that room.
Mrs. Mengel is the board's liaison to the tech prep program, and as such, we've kept in touch with her over the years of this project. Let's see who we have here. This is an incredibly wonderful group.
You sure
You surround yourself with a lot of fine people. You get to do this and look good. You just read the notes and talk. John Vencius is our department chairperson for guidance and will be primarily responsible for the career education piece here. Next to John Vencius is Grace Leister. Grace Leister is in the Human Services and Food and Consumer Science Department, formerly Home Ec. And we're working towards Montgomery County Community College Child Development and Gerontology with Mrs. Leister. Kim Callahan is one of our original tech prep teachers, and she is working very closely with us on our tech prep coordinating team. Next to Kim Callahan is Karen Holmes. Karen Holmes is the in-house North Penn High School supervisor for the tech prep program, means that she organizes things, because I'm not a very good organizer. And she does that extremely well. Kathy Wilson is another original tech prep teacher. She is chairperson of the Social Studies Department, and she sits on the tech prep coordinating team at the high school as well, and has been with us from the very first conference, as a matter of fact. And next to Kathy Wilson is Dr. Sue Cahill. Dr. Sue Cahill is the writer for the Bond Projects. Dr. Cahill. You may remember that Dr. Cahill was the writer for the National Excellence Award document, and she is the author of the Goals 2000 proposal, and she will hopefully be the author for the high schools at work proposal and whatever other proposal we could get. I mean, it would go for $1 million, who knows? But those folks, along with several others at the high school, have really made a commitment to tech prep. And I've been told that in the future we will have an opportunity to present the tech prep program to you and to the audience. I look forward to that, because there's a lot more folks who want to talk to you. I have parents or students who can't wait to get up here to talk about what tech prep has done for them.
For President Clemens, I think the recommendation that came out of a meeting that Mrs. Scher and I had attended with Dr. Bond on Monday was that if you and the superintendent would be so kind to place it on the agenda for January, that tech prep should be given its proper due before the community as guidance review and all the other reviews have had. And if that could be done for January, I think that would be...
Can I back that up? That was my major complaint. Donna had a little closer understanding of tech prep, but unlike the Guidance Review Committee, the Social Studies Curricular Committee, or many others, there was never really a presentation of the tech prep program before the board or the community. And I know there's a lot of misunderstandings out there. People don't quite know what's the difference between VOTEC and tech prep. They don't understand the different directions of careers. They think it's just mechanics and the like. And I was very impressed in that meeting. I kind of piggybacked onto a meeting that Donna had already established, because I really wanted to learn a little bit more. And when hope springs eternal, so I asked Dr. Bond, just not with a whole lot of hope though, if he had a strategic plan, and my goodness he did. I was very impressed. I said, well, we've got one in the district for at least one area of curriculum, so we've got to start here. He did have it to back up what his direction was. I think this community would be very impressed, and particularly since this is going to involve about 1/3 of our student body at that high school. That it's important that everyone have an understanding, not those who have their children there even so much as those of us with children in the middle schools and the elementary levels, to know what this opportunity is going to bring. And at that time we may want to discuss your different suggestions more specific to the use of the money, Juan. Now, once you've got it and you've been able to put it into the bank account, then we could have a discussion about where you want to go from there as far as the expenditures, because as you said, there's nothing that we're committed to in exact
Percentage.
spending items per se. And that might work
That's
well.
an interesting point, because we have in the proposal, you've seen 18% for this, 17% for that. We have not literally sat down with the guidance folks, with Mrs. Clark and some other areas, to decide just how we're going to do that. Our hope is that we can help expedite some of the things that this committee had in their package that we're not able to do because they didn't have the funding.
I think that's excellent.
I also want to say that the one, I may have misrepresented one point. There is one thing in this package that I was going to ask for, and I will be asking for whether we get the grant or not. There's a 2% piece in here for someone to person the Future Plan Center. The Future Plan Center is a place where parents, students go to take a look at careers, college potential places, a lot of things, and it's busy. And we need someone in there. And that's going to be a part of my request at personnel time, regardless as to what this document says. And that's the place where you were talking about John Vincius and Curry Doyle and put together the high school. What we need to do there is open it up in some evenings so that the parents can literally get in there with their youngsters and see some of the things.
Juan, I have a question. Given your interest in this, and you've really spent a great deal of time putting this together, along with your support staff, are there other grants out there? So far you listed 47,000 at the beginning, then we had a 65,000 one last month. Now we're 250. Are we going to keep this going?
Oh, yes, I said we have a high schools at work one out there that I want to round off to $500,000.
Okay.
You're not putting that down.
Oh, certainly, I'm going to have you sign it after the meeting. No. The other part is the business and industry partnership, and that's another area that perhaps when we actually talk strictly on tech prep, that I believe we as a board ought to give some serious consideration for, because unless you have someone to do the organizing and connecting in setting up the contacts out there in the business community, it's going to fall to the side as the Renaissance did, and as so many others fall apart. And that takes somebody with a special skill. It has to be a people person, someone who knows industry and knows what type of skills they're looking for, along with the academic talents that's needed, and to open those doors and give them a sense of security that this is a good thing for them to get involved in.
Thank you. Our strategic plan also has an assessment package. We are constantly evaluating what we're doing, making adjustments and changes where we think are most appropriate given what business and industry and our other advisors are telling us. So it's important to know that I think all strategic plans include an assessment package, and we have in fact done that and have some research already completed over the past 3 years.
Okay, over on this side. Bill? Okay. I thank Terry for asking certain questions that I was interested in, with the strings attached and any short or long-term commitments related to the grant. And I guess the long-range plan is the only real commitment that we have in this regard. But I do have these questions. You said a third of the student body would be involved in this. This means it's going to be over 1,000 students, and roughly in that ballpark? From the 10th, 11th, and 12th?
Right now, we have over 800 students involved in this, probably between 800 and 850.
Okay.
So I rounded it off to a third.
Okay, 800, 850.
Right now, remember, all of our students that go through either the Technical Career Center or in the North Bend High School Tech Prep program are considered Tech Prep. So that takes it up to the 800 to 850 students. Yes.
That they're in over, okay.
Between the Technical Career Center and our own program.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now,
the students are in the Technical Career Center and Tech Prep at our place and their place.
All right.
Okay.
Now, a couple of other things there. You will be still stressing your emphasis on the basic academics of reading, writing, and arithmetic. One of the things that I've heard so many times from people in business is they get high school I've heard it in college too. They get graduates from high school that can't master the basics of reading and writing. I'm not talking about the esoteric stuff.
I hear you. We have reworked. We have a reading specialist at the high school, and we've reworked a piece of her schedule so that she can be a support person to our teachers of the tech prep students in the area of reading. Mm-hmm. We have higher expectations of these youngsters in math and science than we ever had. What we're talking about is going back to the new basics. The new basic as expressed to us by business and industry folks. We often use some of the materials that they have out there as we work with our youngsters in addition and in support and supplement the textbooks. So the answer to your question is absolutely and positively yes. And it's also important, Mr. Roman, to note that in the agreements that we have with the post-secondary institutions for these youngsters, what will mean is that they may go into Penn State, Abington at an advanced level, but the deal is they won't graduate early. So the idea is they will get more, not the same. And that's a part of the agreement that we will be signing with those institutions. So the goal here is not to get youngsters out early. The goal is to get these youngsters knowing more.
Good. Okay. One other thing then, the amount of time that they will be spending off the premises, will that be, it'll be less than a half a day, right?
It'll be less than a half a day, but it will vary from one student to the next and one industry to the next and one plan. If a youngster is in a youth apprenticeship program, it will be 3 out of 6 days a week. If a youngster is involved in the internship, it may be 1 time a month. Okay. If they're involved in the mentoring, they may never go out except for maybe 2 or 3 times a year. We will do that dependent upon the program that the youngster is in. Additionally, one of my dreams is to have someone from Montgomery County Community College and someone from Penn State on our campus at their expense teaching our courses.
Fantastic. Okay.
Oh, we're going to do that.
That's it.
Yes, go ahead.
Back to Mr. Allen.
Yes, go ahead.
A comment, as I sit on the board of the both tech school, correct, Technical Career Center with Donna and Ralph, you can really share in the excitement of hearing teachers and administrators and students say, isn't it neat to learn something that I see value in? That, you know, how many times have we all heard, what do I have to learn world cultures for? You know, what am I going to do with world cultures? But now you have the kids that are not necessarily going on to college saying, boy, I'm learning something worthwhile here that's good for me, that I can see in the long term, and it's really nice to see. And I know that over at the, I believe at the Career Center, they do have almost a full-time person dealing with a lot less students. Yeah. So if this is going to go into somewhat apprenticeships, mentorships, shadowing and all this stuff, you're not going to do it with one person, I don't believe.
Well, this person is tired.
Yeah.
This person needs some help.
Yeah.
And we will be knocking on your door too, by the way, Mr. Allen.
Well, I think you better say, but you better, I mean, if you're going to say, is there an obligation to this, I believe there will be an obligation to this, that you're going to need people to be going out and making the arrangements with business and industry to work, to accept the students, work out almost an IEP for each student.
Right.
There's going to be a cost involved. Let's not kid ourselves. There's going to be a people cost involved of somebody going out and taking care of this business for the students. They can't do it themselves. The students can't. And the industry isn't going to come flocking to us to say, what can I do to help? I think if there's somebody out beating on the door, they will help. But there's going to be a cost of people. Let's not pass over that fact.
Well, we didn't want the public to get confused, though, that that's not specific to this grant. In other words, with or without this $250,000 grant, we already made that commitment when we made many of our purchases last year.
You're right, but we're going down a path
and the
that
investment
has a cost.
that's been placed in preparing for the tech prep program at the high school and retooling, but it's just so it isn't direct. There's nothing that's mandated by the grant itself.
No,
it's all in what we need to do because that's
right.
where we intend to
But
invest.
let's not here later, I didn't know we needed people to do this program. We're gonna need somebody, more than one person, but let's all be aware of it now, so we didn't say that we didn't know come budget time.
That's an excellent point, and what we've done through the grant is that we have created a person to do that initially, and our hope is that once we get this established, that we'll take, once we have it in place, it'll need someone to monitor and to keep it running, rather than someone to set it up. And you're absolutely right. Someone's going to have to see that it keeps going. But the major amount of money, we think, will come in the initial getting the business and industries on board.
You need a salesman.
And that's what we've asked for in the grant. You're absolutely right. Hopefully we'll be able to carry it on.
Okay, any other
That's my
questions?
point. Absolutely.
Comments from this side? I just have a few comments. Dr. Bond, I
Juan's okay,
definitely feel that industry in this area sees the need. And I think, to put it back in your court, you have to do a good salesman job to sell it to industry, because I think industry will buy into it, because that gap exists. There's no doubt about it. The gap between white-collar and blue-collar workers exists. It's here, it's real, and those jobs, with the properly trained students, those jobs are there, and our whole country is in need of those workers, and I support the program 100%.
I guess my feeling is that if I can sell this board, business and industry.
I think I heard Andrew Packey talk about mentorships, co-ops, and a youth apprentice. I'm not sure.
We have some apprenticeships from North Moncal. Okay, any other okay, is there all agreement to put this on the agenda for action?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
So I recommend.
Okay, any comments or questions from the audience? Mr. Taylor.
I'm Bill Taylor, and last night the home and school group at 9th grade made me liaison with the school board. And I had been reviewing the past 2 years' history of the school board. And I'm very glad that the meeting tonight has been what it has been and what I expected. Specifically, if you looked at the board and the reaction from this microphone to the set-aside that was made for the obligation that we had toward the teachers when we were working without a contract, I think it was about $1.5 million. If you watch reactions to that, you would have thought about the same things you said about untrained children in terms of mathematical and verbal foul-ups. It's frightening. Go back and look at it. But tonight, it looked like a good work session. I'm very glad to see it and glad to be part of it. But you have your ups and downs.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Graziano.
Bob Graziano from Tillmanson. Dr. Bond, good job as usual. One of my concerns is how many students that graduate from North Penn go on to college. What do you foresee, or how do you foresee this helping in that regard?
Right, we talk about going on to further education because we have about 55 to 60% to go to four-year schools, another 15 to 20% who go on to some other type of further education. So we're up to about 80%. Is that correct, Mr. Vincius?
About 75%.
Okay, 75 to 80% of our students are going on to further education. What we're trying to do here is to assure that those youngsters who do not opt for further education are able to go into the workforce at a level that makes them self-sufficient. That's what our hope is. And for those who go in, our hope, what I foresee, quite frankly, is more students going on to technical schools than currently go. I would expect in 6 to 7 years we could be up to 90, 92%, because that's the area where I think that we have the most need for growth.
You answered my second question, is the goals that they reach going through the tech program, will that persuade them possibly to go on to...
I don't want to get ahead of myself because this is a part of the January report, but these agreements that we have with colleges, this agreement says that if you do and take these courses that are mandated by the high school and the college, you get automatic entrance. You get automatic entrance. And that's what we're aiming for. We're aiming to get these youngsters into further education. We're able to make it in the job market so that they can pay and take care of themselves.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from the audience?
Gentleman in the back.
That microphone? My name is Bill Totten. It sounds like a wonderful program, Dr. Bond. I'm fully in support of it. I guess I have kind of the combination question from Mr. Allen and Mrs. Perkowski. When she asked, are there any strings attached, does this $250,000 have to be spent this year, or is it?
We have 3 years to spend it, but
okay.
We have 3 years to spend it. It's a one-year grant, and hopefully there'll be more money out there next year. We have 3 years to do this.
Okay.
But we don't expect to take 3 years.
One has planned.
Well, I was going to lead into Mr. Allen's question. My concern is, gee, we spend it all this year, we build up all these great expectations, and next year if we don't get it, do we have people who are kind of ticked off that we haven't followed through with the program? Then does the board have to pick up a lot of the expenses or absorb?
See, a lot of this money is in staff development and internships and summer programs for teachers, so that the teachers who are working with these youngsters will be as educated about Hatfield packing as they are about math, social studies, and science.
Mm-hmm.
That's money that will be, that they always have. Most of the money in this package is for that kind of a situation. It's for getting counselors and teachers up on what careers are today. So if we spend this money all this year, we still have that knowledge base, and that's what we're working towards. The piece that will be ongoing is working with the business and industry and getting more people on board and making sure that that stays in place. So most of this money is to make sure that the people responsible for these youngsters understand what the workplace is asking for. We did a test run. One in-service day, we got with the vocational tech, with Dr. Irwin, and we sent 155 teachers into business and industry. It was one of the most incredible in-services we've ever had. They spent a half day there, came back that afternoon and spent the rest of the afternoon talking among themselves in their department. It was amazing how much they learned just from that one experience, and that helped motivate us to do more because they're asking for more. So I can imagine that any time you're growing in a curricular sense that there aren't some cost involved. But quite frankly, there are going to be some cost involved anyway. My hope is that the cost that will be involved will be directed in a path that's good for this district, for these youngsters, and for the workplace. That's what our hope is, and that's what our charge is.
Okay. And so at some point, you have your contact there who you mentioned has given you some guidance as to last year, 100,000 wasn't good, this year, $250,000 worked out. At some point, you will get a sense of how good it looks for next year, and we'll proceed.
When it comes time for personnel recommendations this year, when it comes time for curricular recommendations and textbook recommendations, I will be very clear as to what we would be doing anyway and what's directly related to a new initiative. But this district has always been involved in new initiatives, and this is just another new initiative. And the monies that will come out of this in the future are no more than monies that would come for any new initiative. And they're going to be minimal. They're going to be minimal because these folks have said that they have to be. But what has happened is, so we've gone out, we've put a package together that says, how can we get what we want at the lowest cost possible? And that's what we've been working on. That's what we've been working on. And believe me, I knew when I came into this meeting that I was going to have to answer the question, is this going to cost us $250,000 next year and the year after? And that's why the proposal specifically deals with those issues, that if we never, ever, ever get a dime for it again, we will always, always, always be able to use. And that's staff development.
Okay, terrific. Okay, great. Thank
Dr.
you.
Bond, can I just cut in for Mr. Totten's purpose? It might help. Of the 100% plan utilization for those monies and what you have here in this agreement, all but 20% is used in the area of coordination seminars, in-services, the plan center, internships, training opportunities, etc. You've got 20% allocated for computers, which is something that nobody seems to argue with around here. So essentially 20% of those monies you're going to use for consumable goods that are here today, maybe going tomorrow. And the rest is for, those ongoing measures that you were speaking of.
If we were not putting money into this grant for computers for our 4.0 students, I'd be coming to you for capital equipment money for computers for these students. Regardless. I mean, those youngsters have to have computers. As far as I'm concerned, they need computers regardless. So we put it in here to help with that. For right now, of course, most of the computer use goes to students other than these. These youngsters need to access it as much as anyone else.
But that's all you're spending on consumable goods.
That's exactly right.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Just briefly, Dr. Bond, for those of us who have businesses and have friends who are in business and have some wheels turning out, could you give me an idea of who you consider the target businesses and target types of jobs and occupations are that this
Every business and every occupation in this community is a target. We take a look at McDonald's and think about careers, not the cashier. We take a look at Merck, Sharp, and Doom and recognize that just about every occupation imaginable is at Merck, Sharp, and Doom. You have people who sweep the floors, and you have people who mix the chemicals, and you have people who take care of the animals. What we have said to what the other part of this career package says, that we talk about medicine, we don't talk about being a doctor. How many youngsters wanted to be a doctor, and because they couldn't be a doctor, gave up medicine? How many people wanted to be a lawyer, and because they couldn't become a lawyer, gave up law? And we're talking about careers in the area of medicine, we're talking about careers in the area of law. And that's the difference between this approach and what the traditional approaches have been. We feel so strongly that some of these youngsters' interest is in medicine that we need to create an area of medicine that they can work in. They need to know what it is, and we need to train them for it. And it's amazing how turned on they get by the notion, well, I can still go in medicine. And quite frankly, we all know that some of the most important people in medicine are not necessarily the surgeons. Because you get hooked up wrong, the surgeon can't do you any good. And that's the kind of thing that we talk to our youngsters about. Every job is a career if in fact you're the most skilled and you want it to be. So we're talking about I mentioned McDonald's in the mall. I mean, we use the mall as a teaching experience. We've learned that if our youngsters are going to work. So when we're talking about percentages, we ask them to come back from whatever shop they're working or store they're working in the mall and tell us what the percentages of sales were today. And they sit around in class and work on percentages of sales at the mall. And it's amazing the difference in how quickly they can work out percentages when you're talking about the mall versus Harcourt, Brace, and Mifflin. And that's what our approach is. Because what we believe so strongly is that we need to get to every student in our district, regardless as to what they think their abilities are.
Thank you.
That's right.
Good. Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Dr. Bond.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Turn it back to Dr. Bose. The next topic has already been introduced indirectly, but let me do a quick review for the board and the guests this evening about the state requirement. In 1993, the State Board of Education revised Pennsylvania School Code to require and to mandate that all schools and school districts in the Commonwealth adopt a strategic plan. And the strategic plan looks into the future for at least 6 years and identifies areas of school improvement that the plan will target. Now, this Commonwealth calls it a strategic plan. We've learned that it can be anything any of us would commonly call a long-range plan, that we're looking beyond the here and the now, and we're anticipating what it is that we want standards to be, results to be, goals and objectives to be, the end of an experience to be for the children who come through our school system. And the Commonwealth's school code requires that the community be involved in developing that plan, that the Board of Education is eventually responsible for adopting it and approving it, and therefore assuming responsibility for it, but that its development involves a large cross-section of all the various interest groups in any community that have an interest in or a role to play in developing the future for the students of the community. So we are behind in North Penn. we were identified by the State Department of Education in a group called Phase 3, which means our plan is to be completed and submitted for approval by September of 1996. And as you remember, this plan, this requirement to develop a plan emerged in April of '93. So we're somewhat behind. However, the good news is that wittingly or unwittingly, this school district has already done and completed a number of the planning components, some of which you heard just presented here this evening, other of which hangs on the wall in this building and all our school buildings, called a mission statement, a vision statement, and a statement of goals. Those are components of what the state describes as a requirement to meet the mandate of the strategic plan. So our board needs to be informed about what's expected under Indiana's, or excuse me. I knew I'd do that eventually. It's probably not the last time.
We're all listening. Under
Pennsylvania School Code, and I'm suggesting to the board that it take action as early as the next meeting that would direct me to develop a recommendation on how we would develop a school plan, and to direct me to complete that school planning process by September of 1996, which would put us in a compliance and complete this school district's responsibility for developing a long-range plan. Now, the school board members have in their possession a document that's a little more detailed than this explanation, but I believe it's at least a fair introduction to what it is that we have to do as a school community, as a Board of Education, under Pennsylvania School Code, and I believe we have more flexibility than people originally thought might be a part of this package and this requirement. Additionally, it's also possible that the current state administration, the governor's office, and the Secretary of Education's office may present a request to the legislature to amend the school code in some way to either provide more time or to change some of the planning requirements that are now embodied in the school code. Now, if we wait around to see if that's going to happen, and it doesn't happen, we're really behind the 8 ball. So I suggest that we take advantage of a natural desire on the part of this community and this Board of Education to do the North Penn version of the planning. What we believe represents what we aim to accomplish in the future for the community we serve and the students who come through our school doors every day. And this means everything from the very beginning of their experience to what it means to graduate from North Penn High School. What requirements we believe and the Commonwealth requires for a North Penn graduate or a Pennsylvania high school graduate to have accomplished. I'm suggesting that those are good general goals to begin with, and a responsible community and a responsive staff ought to be in a position to develop such a proposal for the Board of Education to consider and represent to the community what long-range plans this school district will target and what standards it will develop and aim to accomplish. So this is the introduction. We'll certainly provide whatever more papers and documents you need, and my suggestion would be that you respond to a recommendation at the next board meeting that directs me to set up a scheme or a process for accomplishing a plan and give a deadline for the plan to be completed that would be subject to your approval, and would it also involve many of you in its development, and enable us to meet our requirement under Indiana School Code, and also at the same time, did I say that again? Pennsylvania School Code, and also develop what we would think would be a good plan for this community's future and the evolution of its schools.
Good.
You might have some questions.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's start
I
on
know
this
it's
side.
an exciting time.
Bill, do you
Any
know
questions
that?
on this side?
I just have a comment.
Go ahead.
I just think we ought to do this, whether it's required by state law or not.
Yeah.
That just might direct how we do it to some extent, but it's always bothered me that we don't have long-term plans, either financially or educationally. We know we've got things coming up in the future. We generally, I'll take blame myself, I'm not pointing fingers, but we don't do a lot of pre-planning for things that we really know are coming up in the future, and I think this is something that we really have to address and do, regardless of requirements or not. Thank you.
Okay, I need to hold us up right now. We're not gonna take a recess. We need to change the tape right now, so go ahead and change the tape. Okay. Sure.
Dr. Bose, I have to agree with you completely, and also with Bill. On several occasions over the past year and a half, I've asked about an education plan, and I find it totally impossible to fully evaluate our growth needs when there is no future education plan to match up so that you can take into consideration the future of education, such as apprenticeships, such as tech prep programs, and what we would be doing as far as SERB programs. All of those are relevant to evaluating functional capacity and what your true needs are. I've asked before, but not you directly, is there a long-range plan that is in effect right now that is serving as the compass for curriculum outside of those, separated committee reports that we have, individual?
I think we have the mechanism, Mrs. Scheer, to use organizations such as the Curriculum Coordinating Committee and the cycle of curriculum review we already employ to look long range.
Our goal
and to plan
one.
long range.
Okay.
And I think the kind of evaluation you're talking about begins with establishing what it is we expect to accomplish, the standards we would shoot for, the goals and objectives that would represent our obligations. And then, once having set those, we have a measure of progress or lack thereof, which I think every organization needs it. In business, it's a little easier because at least you know whether you made a profit or whether you went to red. In schools, unfortunately, there's less of a practice for long-range planning, but there's a crying need for it, and this is a good time to start.
Well, some of our Goal 1 reports may give you the beginning years to some degree under curriculum, such as we know what we've accomplished under guidance. I don't think we're going to be pulling that one back to the start again. We might lose Judy next.
As I said, we may have many components of what we would consider a final product when we put it together. We won't have to reinvent the wheel. We won't have to duplicate efforts.
With our strategic plan, I'd like to see it also contain the financial management plan and projections that would go with that traditionally through any business. The other part would be, we've never had a report on where we are.
No.
We were promised that by Mr. Bowman, many months ago, and it just never occurred. Is there a committee that's standing right now that you would be picking up with and working? Because there was a strategic planning committee, but we never ever heard the names or the people
No,
involved.
Mr. Sheriff, to the best of my knowledge, there is not a committee, but I believe this is the first step, and I do plan to meet with Dr. Bose and have a discussion. I'll include Mr. Mengel on that. The three of us will get together and talk about it, and we will come forward with a recommendation.
So for 2 years, we've seen strategic planning committee on our agendas, and it doesn't really exist?
There was, but I don't remember.
But it never even maintained at least held where it was? I thought there was a whole group of people that were working on this. This is very ambitious.
That's a fair question to Dr. Bose. I think you should follow up on that. There was a committee that Mr. Bowman and Dr. Elko and I believe Mrs. Sinkinson was on, that they were to be looking at strategic long-term planning, just to see what is in the file
Right.
of what they have accomplished.
Because I thought there was a large
That's a fair
group.
request.
I thought there was a large group of people, honestly, Tommy, gathered such as we had for our secondary ed curriculum. This is going to be a rather ambitious timeline. I'm glad that you've now brought it forward, but I really expected that there was perhaps a gap of the last few months, of course, with the transition, but I thought there was about a year or a year and a half's worth of work under our belt, according to the report we had from Sue Singleton here. She gave one report, but it was over a year ago, and then we weren't updated since that time, because normally it would take 2 years or so to do this. So I think we need to look for a strong group of people that are able to commit sufficient time to being able to help you pull this together under these kind of timelines, because you're going to try to do something in 9 to 10 months that you would traditionally have a couple of years just to organize, and then several months to wrap up.
You also have to keep in mind that it is something that is changeable. I mean, it's a work in progress, I would hope, that gets revised, so.
Right. Oh, yeah, it would be perpetual.
We can't feel that we're under the gun to get this absolute thing done by September that we have to live with for the next 5 years, so there is room to massage it as we need.
We've been a ship at sea without a compass, and I believe that it's important that we do tie this together as nicely, as tightly, as closely tied to this community's value system, its priorities in education, and that we give some concrete milestones. And there are many of these strategic plans, they don't have any accountability tied into them either. I'd like to see something that's tangible, that whether it's all third graders will achieve at a certain reading rate level, or something that we can say whether or not we've met the challenge or not. You know, I'm looking forward to that.
I think that Dr. Bose did mention when you change curriculum and you have new plans, that you set standards and you measure. And I think that that's critical to this. I also think that in the establishment of long-range plans, just like what Bill said, they're constantly being revised. Now, every year, you want to update it and measure where you went wrong in the most current part of that, make the changes and move forward. Because in essence, the 5-year plan's first year becomes the basis for developing a budget for the coming year in that regard. So there's an interrelationship here that is essential to good business management for the district.
Sort of like a personal inventory, perpetual inventory.
Okay, any other comments from this side? Let's move over here.
A couple quick comments. One, I agree with Bill that we should be doing this because it's the right thing to do. Forget about the state mandate. I think that Dr. Bose, you'll find that a lot of the components are around here because there are people that have been trying to look forward whenever we can. There's mission goals and so forth. That's all before the OBE flat. We had missions goals and so forth. The other thing to point out is that we're in phase 3, not by accident, because there's a letter you'll find in the file where we asked to be moved to phase 3 because of all of the controversies. Third thing is that a lot of our neighbors, we're in phase 3, some of them are in 2, some of them are in 3, but a number of them over the last year and a half have been aggressively developing these plans, and there are some models out there that people have practiced and found out what works and doesn't work. You can pick up a model and have it in place very quickly to involve the community involvement and how to manage that. So some of those models are out there that we could put back in place very, very quickly with a couple phone calls to the other people.
Right, you're right.
Thank you. Karen?
Ralph just jogged my memory. Didn't we select a model here? Didn't Dr. Elko bring
We moved it to our
forward a
last year. This is the last year. There were 3 phases. We moved it to the...
No, that was the guidance. That was the guidance.
You can look in the file, but I don't think anything happened. I think that when all 3 of the people that were involved in it are now no longer with the district, so
As a
don't
matter
count
of
on
fact,
much.
Donna deserves credit for that one. She was the one who recommended the switch of our phase.
I think we should go through with it. My questions about strings being attached to stuff is not to stop us from going through with anything at all. It's just, I don't want it to pull down our own standards.
If anything, should lift our standards.
Nagel?
Just a comment, no question. As I listened to everybody, a lot of it belabors on things that did and did not happen in the past, and I guess that kind of baggage is a bit unfair for Dr. Bose, in that regardless which folks are here this time 2 months from now, it doesn't matter. I think everybody now has to realize there's work to be done. It has to be done in 1 year, and they get behind Dr. Bose and get it done. And that's all there is to it. And I wish Dr. Bose good health through this, and Godspeed.
Get on with it.
Yeah, right.
I think it's obvious there's agreement for that to be on the action agenda.
Yeah, I think we need to initiate.
Questions or comments from the audience? Okay, we stand adjourned.